Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another daily Marvel Snap video. Today we have a new featured location, Shuri's Lab. And yesterday we saw the release of Black Panther, and it's been absolutely phenomenal. There have been some absolutely game-breaking cards, locations. We got a 4 million power Black Panther on stream. It was absolutely insane. And so far it's been pretty decent. But with Shuri's Lab, that's going to help elevate that power even further. The featured location, of course, occurs in 40% of games. And so, unlike a hot location, you don't always want to build a deck entirely around the location. Rather, you want to build a deck that is a good standalone deck by itself, but just leans into having additional benefit from that location when it occurs. And so all of these decks are going to be good standalone decks. You're going to be able to use them even after the location goes away, but during the next 2 days while the location is in effect, they're going to be even better. And so let's jump into my top 5 deck recommendations to run while Shuri's Lab is in effect. And so starting with Pool 1, it's a pretty standard. This is going to be the same one that we recommended in our top 5 Black Panther builds, because Pool 1 is pretty limited. You could do Zoo, but you don't get as much upside out of the location. You can always drop Nightcrawler into Shuri's Lab, and you're going to have a 4 power Nightcrawler instead of a 2. But just overall, you don't get as much value out of it in this pool. And so what we are going to lean into is the Forge Mr. Sinister combo. Shuri's Lab is going to allow us to drop Forge into one of the other lanes. Whenever we drop Mr. Sinister as a follow-up, he's going to come down as a 4 power initially. That's going to double to 8. So you're going to have 2 8 power tokens for 2 cost on the board. So as early as turn 3, because of the Forge interaction, you can have a 16 power play in Shuri's Lab, which is already going to start you off in the right direction. And in Pool 1, you don't have to worry about counter cards like Shang-Chi. And so as long as it's not a 1 cost card, the opponent shouldn't really have any way that they can destroy your cards. So this interaction is going to be absolutely nuts. The Forge into Black Panther is going to be really strong, but then again, Black Panther by himself is going to be strong. And then we look at winning one of the other lanes by either doing Angela, a couple of 1-cost cards. Maybe we cap it off with Wolfsbane. On 4, we move Nightcrawler out, and then we drop an Odin on turn 6 as a way to elevate our power. But this deck list should offer you quite a bit of flexibility for the location today, and you can find a lot of win conditions here. Next up, we have the Pool 2 build for Black Panther. Now, this one is going to be somewhat similar to the Pool 1 build, but it has a couple of other unique quirks. So in Pool 2, we get Killmonger, which is going to allow us to drop Nova and destroy Nova to buff up our cards further. It continues to lean in on the Forge and then the Mr. Sinister or Black Panther interaction, but we also get the addition of Okoye here. Okoye is going to, on reveal, give +1 power to every card in your deck. So then if you draw into your Mr. Sinister after that, and then you play that card in Shuri's Lab, or really anywhere, you're able to capitalize on the upside and elevate that upside from Okoye here. And then the rest of the deck is a pretty standard Odin on reveal. Black Panther is just going to be absolutely nuts in Shuri's Lab, especially if you drop Forge before that. It's going to absolutely create some crazy things. Now, with the Pool 2 deck, we do have to be on the lookout for Shang-Chi plays, because Shang-Chi enters the mix in Pool 2. They can potentially counter our large power plays. And so maybe we end up teching in a Shang-Chi somewhere. Maybe we take out Storm, we put Shang-Chi in, and then we lean into like a Forge into Mr. Sinister. That way we have the 16 power that's not reachable by Shang-Chi. And then we can have Shang-Chi as a counterplay for whatever they drop on their turn. But it's going to take a little bit of teching. This is just brewed right now. I haven't tested it with Shuri's Lab. But in theory, it should work well. But if you're running into Shang-Chi's, I would say your first sub would be maybe teching out Storm and testing out Shang-Chi in its place. Now, Pool 3 is where these builds are going to get absolutely insane. They're going to become busted really quickly. And the first one is a Zero build. We already know that Zero, Red Skull, Enchantress builds are already insanely strong, and with Shuri's Lab, that's going to elevate it even further. Because you can imagine you do a 0 into a Red Skull into Shuri's Lab. That is a 30 power card with no negative downside. Then you can drop Taskmaster as a way to copy that 30 power into another lane. Nuts. Absolutely insane when you can just push 30 power relatively easily. It's going to create some crazy gameplays. Now, this one we have to watch out for Shang-Chi plays, but with this list, we can spread our power pretty decently. that I don't know that a late game Shang-Chi is necessarily something that we have to worry about too often, because we're going to be playing our cards in a lot of different lanes. We're not focusing solely on Shuri's Lab. Just one card, just the Red Skull in Shuri's Lab, should be enough to lock it down in most scenarios. And overall, this deck should run pretty seamlessly. It's a pretty straightforward destruction deck. Venom is going to be phenomenal in this location, because we're going to be able to have all of our cards that get that double buff, and then Venom is going to be able to consolidate that as well. So if we do a Typhoid Mary, that becomes a 20 power, and if we had maybe a Bucky Barnes, any other cards in that location, and we drop a Venom in there, that is going to absorb the power into the Taskmaster. There's a lot of flexibility with Shuri's Lab in this list, and this one is going to be a top contender for one of the strong decks for today, if you're not running into too many decks that counter this. Now, last week with Cloning Vats, I missed out on Deadpool. That was a big power play that I missed out on showcasing in one of the builds, because Deadpool into the Cloning Vats was going to be phenomenal. And just like Cloning Vats, Deadpool is going to be phenomenal in Shuri's Lab. And I think this one is a little bit more of a sleeper. I don't know that as many people are going to think of this combination, but Deadpool by himself can already get pretty busted pretty quickly. And Shuri's Lab is going to allow that to start much more quickly, because your Deadpool right off the bat is going to be 2 power. You destroy it once, you drop it down in Shuri's Lab again, that's 4 power. It's basically going to allow you to double the amount of death triggers that you have on your Deadpool, which is going to be absolutely insane. And then you can always consolidate it with Venom. You have your Taskmaster. We also have Black Panther in this list as a kind of decent turn 5 drop, or maybe even a turn 6. We could do a turn 6 Black Panther plus Deadpool. Depending on how many cards we've destroyed, Death could be pretty cheap. We have a wave as a way to kind of control what the opponent can do on that final turn. Just a lot of flexibility in this list. Deathpool or Deathpool Wave, or however you want to call this list, that uses the Deadpool mechanic plus the Wave and Death mechanic, is already pretty strong. It can hold its own during any day of the week. But with this featured location, I think it's absolutely going to become broken very, very easily. This is one of the lists that I have on my top watched lists, because I think this could be really, really strong. I think we're going to see some 100, some 200 power Deadpools today, and I'm here for it. I am absolutely excited to see the monstrosity that Shuri's Lab is going to unfold into the meta. And then lastly, we have a build that is very, very similar to a build that I ran middle of last week. It was a control build. And this build focuses around either being able to drop your Sarah, that way you can drop maybe Shang-Chi and Maximus on that final turn, or just a combination of a couple of your different cards. And there are going to be a few key resources here that are going to be really, really good to have on the board. So Captain Marvel is going to be a sleeper in Shuri's Lab. At 5 cost, she comes down at 6 power. She has the ability to roam across the lanes and impact multiple lanes. If you drop her in Shuri's Lab, that is a mobile 12 power card that is now on the board, which is going to be a really big board presence and threat at that point. And then if you also follow that up on turn 6 with a Shang-Chi, you can create some really crazy swings. Maybe you follow that up with a Maximus and a Killmonger. Maybe that is enough. You can drop Maximus into the Shuri's Lab location. He's going to become 14 power for 3 cost. Is absolutely broken. And this deck allows us to counter what the opponent is playing, but still offer quite a bit of power push on our own. And I think this one is going to be pretty strong. If you're seeing a lot of destruction triggers, if you're seeing a lot of those really greedy lists, I think this one is going to be your key to combating and fighting those lists while still pushing a decent amount of power by yourself. And so that is my top 5 deck recommendations to try out today. Let me know in the comment section down below what build you're running. Let me know how you're enjoying the new featured location. As always, this has been TLSG. Later, guys.